Bringing to the conversation,
this is special.
Lord Richard Luce, former Lord Chamberlain to the Queen. Lord Luce, it's great to have you with us this morning, sir. Your thoughts as you think back on your relationship and your time spent with Queen Elizabeth.
Well, it's a great privilege, first of all, to be on your program and to join my son, Edward. The job that I had, which I started exactly 22 years ago, was as Lord Chamberlain. And the job of the Lord Chamberlain to the Queen is to be head of our household and to be accountable to the Queen for the performance of all the staff on the household and to be her principal advisor. In a way, you were a kind of chairman of the staff and had to lead the policy for the Queen and to give her advice on any problems that she might face.
Lord Luce, it's Catty Kay here. One of the things I think that has mystified us about the Queen is her commitment to duty and the idea that she had all of these endless duties that she did 24/7, 365 days a year, and she never seemed, at least in public, to complain about them or get fed up with them. You had a glimpse behind the curtain. Did you ever sense that what we saw on the outside, that incredible stoicism and tolerance for all that she had to do and the people she had to meet, did it ever waver in private? How did she deal with that?
Well, here we have to bring in the Duke of Edinburgh, because the remarkable side of this story is how they complemented each other. I had an office next door to the Duke of Edinburgh during the course of that job, and I would often seek his advice. And the Queen would very often say, look, we've got a problem on this, that, and the other. Before you give me your final advice, will you go and see the Duke of Edinburgh and have a chat with him and come back with your joint view? And so his role in helping her through this job cannot be underestimated. It was quite remarkable, and a great deal is owed to him for the success of these remarkable 70 years for the Queen.
Ed Luce, this is such a special moment. You're writing about my father, and now we're asking you to interview your father. So you have the next question, Ed.
Yeah, this is a surreal moment that I'm gonna make the most of. Dad, you've had two female bosses. You were in politics, of course, and in the Thatcher government in the 80s. And, of course, you served the Queen. Which of your two female bosses was easier to work for?
That's a typically difficult question which Edward would ask me. You could not have had two more different people altogether than the Queen and Margaret Thatcher. And indeed, it's quite fascinating to look at their particular rapport and how they got on together. But Margaret Thatcher was a very tough taskmaster. She really put a great deal of pressure on our ministers and tested us all out every day. And she could be very fierce with us in front of other people, in front of other ministers. That was her way of testing us out. Whereas the Queen had a quite opposite effect, which was this, that if you were in her presence, you always wanted to do your best for her. She didn't have to say anything almost. You simply wanted to give it your best. And if you made a mistake, you would go and apologize. And above all, what she said to me right at the beginning is, I want you to create a nice atmosphere for the staff. Because if they work in a nice atmosphere, they will give up their best to the monarchy. And that is the best thing to do. When I arrived in the job, of course, she had already created that atmosphere. And so it was a very different form of leadership between those two people, two very different people.
Now, Lord Luce, Joe Scarborough here. I'm curious, can you provide us some insight beyond what we've seen on The Crown about her relationship with Margaret Thatcher, which, of course, The Crown depicts it as starting rather in a difficult manner, but by the end, she appreciated the changes, many of the changes that Thatcher brought to Britain. What can you tell us about that relationship? Lord Luce?
I'm sorry, I admit I actually missed that question.
Oh, the question was, could you give us some insight on the relationship between Prime Minister Thatcher and Queen Elizabeth?
Well, I think, well, just remember for 2 days now, just before her death, she had 15 prime ministers with her, all of them different. And when they had their weekly meetings, which there was a regular feature of the relationship, you would, not even I would know the outcome of that meeting unless there was a decision which had to be passed on. It was a very private meeting. As far as Margaret Thatcher is concerned, I've actually, when I was Vice-Chancellor of the Independent University of Buckingham, had the Queen at the university to open a business school, and Margaret Thatcher was my Chancellor. And they had lunch with me together with my wife, Rose. And I can tell you that the Queen was very amused, I think, by the character of Margaret Thatcher, by her strong views and strong character, and was absolutely in admiration, but at the same time probably not always at ease, particularly on Commonwealth matters.
Yeah, Mike, far more amused, I'm sure, than members of her cabinet.
I'm sure. And Lord Luce, 15 different prime ministers served the Queen and the Crown. And we, as Americans, never got a glimpse as to whether she had any strong feelings, differences in ideology between the prime ministers' governments and the philosophies of the various prime ministers. Did you ever get any sense of disappointment or disagreement from the Queen about whoever was serving her in the country?
Well, the point about it really is that it was a very confidential relationship. Remember that Bagehot once said, her job is to be consulted, to advise, and to warn. The Queen, in today's age, unlike the days of Queen Elizabeth I, is above party politics. So she never interferes in the party political scene, but we will be very reflective in our meetings with prime ministers who've already said to us, people like Sir John Major in public this morning, and Mrs. May and others, that she gave a lot of wisdom because of our lengthy experience in having worked with so many other governments and prime ministers. But above all, the most important message was that she was above party politics. And that was the strength, that is the strength of the monarchy.
Yeah. Lord Richard Luce, thank you so much. A great honor to have you here with us this morning. And I must ask you the same question I would ask Dr. Brzezinski at the end of all of his interviews. Tell us something about young Edward. Was he a difficult child to raise?
Sounds like he might have been.
That is asking a very, very difficult question because he and my other son, his brother, were very lively at school. I'm choosing my words rather carefully. And he was a challenge, I think, to the headmaster of any school he was at. But there was a frustrated talent there. And that's what I'm so glad to see today.
All right. Thank you so much, Lord Luce.
Love it.
Great talking to you. We're